This podcast is made on the lands of the Pambalong clan of the Awabakal people, and we acknowledge elders past and present. In 1965, the University of Newcastle opened its doors with the vision of making tertiary education accessible to those in its region. Fast forward to today, and the university now has more than 200,000 alumni who have made a difference all over the world. Welcome to Leading Conversations, a series bringing you stories from our alumni, the people who've shaped and been shaped by the University of Newcastle. In our second episode, Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky speaks with alumnus and Stockland CEO Tarun Gupta, who since graduating has fostered a leading career in property development. Tarun's own experience highlights how embracing yes and celebrating differences can lead to a significant and successful edge in the workplace.
Hello, Tarun, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Alex. Thank you. Great to be here.
You graduated from the University of Newcastle in 1994 with a Masters of Business Administration, an MBA. Since then, you've led a successful career in property development through companies like Lend-Lease and now the CEO of Stockland. If you step through the doors of a large suburban shopping centre, you no doubt recognise the Stockland brand and also their incredible work. But they're much more than shopping centres. They span from designing residential communities to creating thriving town centres. Quite an incredible piece of work since you graduated some years ago from the university and you've been in the industry. What would you say are your proudest achievements so far?
When I joined the real estate industry in 1994, I actually joined it in Newcastle at Charlestown Square, which is a thriving part of Newcastle. And what is amazing about our industry is that what we do, which is, create communities, retail town centers, workplaces. Nowadays, we're creating data centers, logistics assets. They all serve a purpose, serving Australians and serving the community. And people grow up in these communities. They have jobs. They enjoy life. They work, play. And that is the answer I wanted to give. That is what I'm really proud of when I look at the little contribution I've made personally, but I've had the privilege of working on some of the amazing communities that were either a concrete piece of land like Barangaroo on Sydney Harbour, and now today it's a thriving metropolis, really a sub-city in the heart of Sydney, thriving communities with thousands of people who are living their life. That is what gives me satisfaction of being in this sector. We celebrated at Stockland 70 years, 3 years ago. And as part of those celebrations, we tracked down one of our first home buyers, which was near Cronulla. And they were a couple who bought a home from us, I think in 1962, very early on in the history of the company. And I went to meet them with Rob Harley from the Australian Financial Review, and we did a story. And they were two wonderful couple who had the original design, and then they told the story of their life, where their kids had grown up, they had done an extension of that house, and they still lived in it, and the way their life had prospered in that house. And that is the story that I think we could tell many, many more times in the work we do. So that's what I'm really proud of creating assets that serve the community.
I understand when you came to Australia to Newcastle, it was your first time outside of India. So it must have been a very big challenge for you. And I guess say took a lot of courage to do that and to move halfway across the world. And I'm just wondering, what was your experience and motivation in doing that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say courage. I think when I look back and I go, reckless stupidity is now when I'm much more mature. But when you're 21, Alex, your risk appetite is very different to when you're in your 50s. So how I got here, so I'd done a bachelor's in economics in India at the University of Delhi. I had aspirations to do an MBA because I wanted to get into the business community. And it was actually my father who encouraged me to apply to overseas universities, which I started doing, and I sent out lots of applications. And fortunately, University of Newcastle in Australia was one of those universities that gave me a chance. It was very exciting. I don't think I had I had any fear at that time. It was more, as I said, I just had no downside in my mind. I went, okay, I'm going to go to a great country, see how it works out. I didn't have a lot of money. I bought a one-way ticket. So it was only a one shot. There was no return ticket if it didn't work out. And but the journey, I remember it vividly. I'll never forget it. One-way ticket, never been overseas. Flight to Changi in Singapore, then a flight to Melbourne, then a flight to Sydney. Obviously, it was a cheap ticket, so I went through many cities. And then the most profound image I have is boarding an Aero Pelican plane to Belmont Airport in Newcastle. And the plane took off from Kingsford Smith Airport here in Sydney. And it flew. It was a gorgeous day, beautiful. It was February, so it was nice summer's day in Sydney. And it flew over the city, over Sydney Harbour, Opera House, and over the northern suburbs towards Newcastle. And I just looked at it. The image is etched in my mind. I went, this can't be real. This is more than a postcard. This is so beautiful.
Coming from the busy streets of India, Newcastle was a big change for Tarun. Living off campus in Waratah, he was struck by the shift from the vibrant sights and sounds of home to the new quietness of Newcastle's suburbs.
I think it was Maud Street in Waratah, and I shared with about 4 other students one house, and I took a room in it. So that's how I started off. People do ask me, was it a big cultural change? And, what was the impact of coming from overseas? And you've got to remember, 1992, there was not a lot of overseas students, particularly in Newcastle. I was one of the few. So I was a bit different. But the most profound impact to me was not, the language or the food or the culture. It was actually how quiet everything was. Because growing up in New Delhi, you come outside your house, color, noise, smells. Here you came out and I'd look left and I'd look right, and there was no human beings, maybe a bus going past. And it took me quite a while to get myself adjusted to not seeing as much activity.
Living in a city like Newcastle at the time, 30 years ago, it would have been a lot quieter than it even is today. Can you comment a little bit about your motivation to succeed coming out of India, where it's obviously very different country, very different setup and expectations?
I think my motivations, and as is usually the case, your values and who you are is formed in your formative years growing up with your parents and your family. And I have wonderful parents. I was out at dinner with them last night at a Thai restaurant. They were both born in what is now Pakistan. And as you know, in 1947, India was divided into India and Pakistan. It called the partition, a horrible part of our history where a lot of suffering took place. But long story short, they migrated to India as refugees because they were Hindus, and that's what the migration was taking place. So my entire family came from Pakistan, and they started off in tents in refugee camps in and around Delhi. So growing up, my aunties, uncles, my parents, there was always this struggle of this story of struggle, but of hard work, and that hard work paying off, because by the time I was growing up, my father was a senior police officer. He'd put himself through university, and he was a respected member of the community, adding value. And my uncles and aunties were business people, and they were all starting to succeed, but they all started with zero, nothing. So the stories growing up were all about, this is what so and so did, and this is how it started, and that gave me that sort of framework that you can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. And I think that's what gave me the framing in my mind that when the opportunity came, yeah, sure, I'll go to a foreign country with no money, and I'm sure it'll all work out. And that self-belief is there, and that positive sort of growth mindset. Because in India growing up, frankly, if you're not working hard and making the best effort you can, there is no safety net. There is no social security. There is nothing. If you don't try hard and succeed, there is 1.4 billion people competing, and you're going to get left behind. So you have to. The failure is not an option, if you know what I mean. Was how I was brought up. So here we are. Yeah.
My parents were also refugees to Australia, came from the Soviet Union and China after the Second World War. And so it's a very similar kind of stories that they used to instill in me. And a lot of, I think, migrants and first-generation Australians bring that sort of motivation. You have to get out there and succeed. So that certainly drove me also. So I kind of relate to very much what you're talking about. I know our parents always had high expectations of us. That's how it was. So we've obviously, you and I have lived up, I hope, to our parents' expectations. But it's wonderful to hear about you and your life and getting here and starting to live in some shared accommodation. But what were you doing outside of your studies, and how were you supporting yourself? Tell me a little bit about your student life here.
So one of the reasons I had, when I applied, I had admission in, the UK, the US, and Australia, and I picked the Australia. And the rational reason was because as an overseas student, you're allowed to work legally 20 hours a week. Even today, that's the rule. And that meant, that was very important for me. Whereas in the other two, UK and US, people work, but not legally. It's not allowed. And I didn't want to do that. So that was the most rational reason. But the other reason was I don't like the cold. So weather here, and of course, I'm a lover of cricket, and watching cricket, World Series cricket from India I had a big affinity to come to Australia. They were the more non-rational reasons. But coming here, I had to support myself. So I started off, I didn't have any skills, even though I had a bachelor's degree. In India, you don't work per se. If you're middle class, you don't go out and work at Macca's. There is no McDonald's there. So I had no real skills to offer. So I started off with delivering pamphlets, but the dogs sort of chased me out on the bicycle, and I didn't want to do that very quickly. So eventually I got lucky and got a job at the Taj restaurant on Hunter Street as a kitchen hand, which is really code for chopping onions, cleaning toilets, doing everything that no one else will do. But I was very, very happy to do that. And then about 6 weeks later, I got a call from what used to be called Gandha's Indian restaurant on Beaumont Street in Hamilton, that, do you want to learn how to be a tandoori chef? Because the tandoori chef had left. And the boss was irritated because the chef had opened a competing restaurant, and he didn't want to. He asked me in the interview, so you're doing your MBA. Do you want to open a restaurant after you finish? I go, no chance. No, that is not in my career plan. I've come here to have a business career. Restaurants is not part of it. He said, all right, I'm going to teach you how to cook. And I said, sure. So he taught me how to cook tandoori. And I discovered I have a talent for cooking, and I still cook today. In fact, 4 weeks ago, my executive team, and I cooked butter chicken and cooked a big spread for our staff here in this building. 275 people came and ate. So that's how I put myself through uni. Was working at that Gandha's Indian restaurant, which meant everything I earned went in my overseas tuition fees, which are very high, as you know. And I only had, two expenses: $40 a week rent, $15 for the bus card. Food I used to get at the restaurant. So the rest was, and I didn't drink at that. I couldn't afford to drink or do anything else. But, it worked out.
I do know that restaurant's still trading, and it's not far from my home. So I've tasted the meals there. I think you've left a great legacy of good food dining there. But moving on to your MBA, we like to think that a postgraduate qualification gives you a competitive edge. What do you think the MBA at Newcastle University gave you as you sought to move into a professional career?
Well, definitely it gave me an edge. So I joined the graduate program at Lindley straight out of the MBA. And I think I know there was 26 people in the cohort, all were bachelor's degree. I had an MBA. And it was very clear early in my career that having an MBA just gave me an edge. I was coming at issues at a very different angle, and my career was accelerating because my foundation in strategic thinking. I started in the marketing team at Charlestown Square, so I had done quite a bit of marketing courses in the MBA, organizational design, all the things you learn in the MBA were giving me an edge, and I could see it day to day. I think that foundation was very important. But the courses that I particularly enjoyed, and I think the strategic thinking and the strategic framing of problem solving, which is what you learn in MBA, I apply to this day because I've had a very diverse career in property. I've worked across sectors, across countries, across every state in Australia, across every property sector. And I take that strategic framing to anything I don't know. And within a short period of time, you can master at least the strategic elements of it. So that was definitely a very important part of I think my success in my career was doing the MBA at Newcastle because the edge was there. It was there, and within the first 3 years, I think I had 5 moves, 5 or 6 promotions compared to the others because I was just learning faster. I was attacking problems in a different way, and that was noticed. So yeah, can't speak highly enough of what I learned at the university.
Because you're an international student coming into an Australian corporation, it seems that from what you just said, there was no kind of disadvantage. In fact, because you had the MBA, you felt like you had an edge. Is there an aspect of being an international student working for an Australian business that gives you, well, there might be obviously challenges there, but there's also different ways of approaching problems?
When you come from different backgrounds, different upbringings, you look at a set of business issues or whatever the community issues are. Because you have different context, you can come at it differently. And that difference, if it's supported properly in the ecosystem, and I had a organization at Lendlease that was wonderful in celebrating diversity and diversity of thought, then you got some really special outcomes because my context was different. I would look at a problem because I can assure you the context growing up in India is completely different to growing up here. And I think that's why it's shown through. And I do hear people, and I've spoken to, and many new migrants who come and go, it's difficult, I'm different. And yes, those can be challenges, but I think you can change it into a strength by going, because what I found, even in the Newcastle community, was people were very curious because I was different. And I celebrated it. I owned it. I shared with them my difference, different background. And that gave me actually an edge because I was more interesting. If I would present in a forum, people would listen to you differently because you were different. So I think my recommendation would be own the difference, celebrate it, and contribute the context you have because you can add value because that you're bringing a different perspective.
Not only was Tarun confident in his diverse background, but the people of Newcastle were also accepting and curious about the different cultural context Tarun came from.
Newcastle's a wonderful place. I don't know if the city owns me, but I still call myself a Novocastrian, even though I only spent about 4 years of my time. I spent more time in Sydney, but I have very fond memories. And I think it was really the people. When I interacted with, people are very down to earth, people are very authentic, and they're very curious. And they're very welcoming and warm. And I think that's a great environment for anyone to thrive in.
Tarun, you joined Stockland as the CEO in June 2021. And I guess that time it was just coming out of COVID, but also straight into a housing crisis, which is still kind of unfolding, and everyone talks about it all the time. Now, Stockland has been right in there delivering more homes than others. And I'm just wondering, what kind of leadership did you have to bring to this challenge? That it's an immense challenge, not just for your company, for the nation, and how you got your team around you and how you've been approaching this.
Yeah, it's I'm only standing on the efforts of many people who came before me, building the legacy that this great company Stockland has. We've been going for almost 75 years, and we were founded by actually three immigrants, and Irvin Graf, who was our first CEO, a Hungarian immigrant architect who started the company. He actually started the company building 6 5-row sort of affordable homes in Western Sydney. That's how it was actually housing and affordable housing where the company started. So that legacy has lived on. And even today, Stockland is now, the largest deliverer of homes in the country. This year, we'll do around 9,000 homes for Australians right across the country, and that's more than any other institution, government or private, delivering homes for Australians. And 95% of those homes that we're delivering currently would qualify for the first home 5% deposit scheme that the federal government has put out. So these are very affordable homes. They're still expensive for the average Australian because of the the affordability problems we have, but relatively the homes we produce and our builder partners produce are the first, very affordable. So we take a lot of pride in that. Our purpose at Stockland here is to create a better way to live. And that's what drives our team. So it was always a strength, residential development. What I've done is I've amplified it with the team. And instead of, for the company, it was about 15% of our capital employed. It's growing to 35%. We used to do 5,000 to 6,000 homes. We're going to start doing 9,000 to 10,000 homes. So we have doubled our efforts and really leaning in this time of housing crisis to provide more choices right across, affordable homes from, townhomes to single family homes to over 55 living, apartments, single family homes. We're trying to service the continuum of housing, and we feel we have a very important role to play, and we really take a lot of pride in making that contribution at a time where more and more Australians, are struggling to get into the housing market. And about 40 to 60% of our buyers of our product over the long term are first home buyers. So we have put more first home buyers into the housing market again over the last 70 years than I would argue than any other institution, including government. I can't prove that one, but I think I'm right.
Not only is passion in your work important, but having a high level of openness to saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way is something Tarun practiced consistently in his journey to becoming a CEO.
I think it's back to, and this would be my advice to, our students coming out looking to find their path in life and their career. I think I was fortunate enough to land in a sector, real estate property, which really I loved. From the day I arrived into the sector, I loved what we do in this sector, and I've stayed on. I think that would be my advice, is if you get up in the morning, you look forward to the day and the contribution you're going to make, then that'll sustain you. So I think that's what drives my ambition, passion, whatever you want to call it, is because, as I said, no 2 days are the same. We have a very diverse sort of, because we're doing all these things in the community. There's, financial challenges, there's community challenges, there's profit, there's purpose, there's safety, there's sustainability, different sectors. It's very dynamic environment, and I think that's where the passion comes from. But also because I enjoy it, but also you work with some amazing people in our industry and in the community. So I think it's because I love what I do. It's not really, it's work, but it's not, it's something I really enjoy. And I think that's what I would recommend, is find that path. If you enjoy it, you're going to be good at it, and eventually it'll be sustainable. So that's what's been going on.
I guess one of the things we've got now at the University of Newcastle, which is a little bit different to when you were here, Tarun, is that we've got career-ready placements that in every degree, certainly every undergraduate degree, you can't graduate from the university without doing a placement and training. So we always had that for our doctors, nurses, teachers, engineers, but not so much for our business people. We now have our students, if they want to be an accountant or a financial advisor, work in HR, they have to be working in a career-ready placement. So one of the things is to think about how to get the students. We can help them ourselves through our industry links, but I think there's also an opportunity to be a bit of a self-starter in this place, in this area around career-ready placements. So if you were imagine you're back in the university, you're a second or third year student, and they say, hey, Tarun, you should do this career-ready placement, and you might have thought about doing it in property. How would you go about it? A bit of advice to get people thinking about how to take care of their own career when you've got this opportunity. But it's also, it can be looked upon as an obligation. It's really, I think, an opportunity to get moving. So what would you say to them?
Yeah, Alex, it's the same advice actually I've been giving my son, who's in first year uni doing business here in Sydney. And this year, first year, he's just finished, which we agreed, not the first year is not a good year to just go out, start working, build a foundation. But next year, definitely, he'll get opportunity to go and into the workplaces and get some internships, etc. And I think I would strongly recommend that students take that opportunity, because I can talk from an employer. When we employ graduates who have already demonstrated that they can work in a team and have had some experience in different environments, whether it's companies or not-for-profits or other institutions, government institutions, sporting institutions, whatever the framing is, that experience and the ability to do well in that environment and learn through that is quite a strong foundation. I wish I had it when we were doing our MBA, but that wasn't available at the time for overseas students, because you start to learn, firstly, as you get that different opportunities, you start to narrow, I think you can narrow your focus a bit in terms of what I really like doing and not. So rather than being quite wide, you take that, some of that, focus can come in as you get some experience. But I would highly encourage people to take every opportunity the university is creating. There is absolutely no downside. And my other advice, which someone gave me, when you're in those more formative years, say yes. Keep saying yes to every opportunity that comes, because you don't know where it's going to lead. If you start saying no, you're already shutting yourself to the possibilities the world's offering you. As you progress in your career, I didn't say no till about year 5 of my career. Up till then, they would say, go here. So I was in Newcastle. They said, go to Penrith. I said, sure, I'll pack my bags tomorrow. I'm gone. Then they said, go to the city in Sydney. I said, oh, that's very expensive, but sure, I'll do it. City of Sydney. 3 months later, they said, now you got to go back to Newcastle. So I came to Newcastle. 12 months later, they said, go to Melbourne. Sure, I'll go to Melbourne. Go to Bankstown. And then after Bankstown, they said, now go and run the marketing department. I said, no, I want to be a fund manager. So it took me 5 years to say no. And when I look back, that saying yes, you don't know where those folks are taking you, especially in those formative years. I think people become maybe a bit too picky in the earlier years. I would say just expand your horizon. Yes, you'll learn what you're really good at and what you enjoy, but keep saying yes.
Is there any advice you would give us at universities we can produce better graduates for industry and also to position them well for their future careers? I'm always interested to hear how our university can do a little better, because I always seek to do that. One of the things we did pick up was on these career-ready placements and giving people internship opportunities as part of their degree. But I'm also thinking about, is there things that we should be doing, universities should be doing better? Because you probably pick up a newspaper every day or listen to the radio, there's some sort of criticism of universities not really doing exactly what is expected of them. So as a leader, I wouldn't mind hearing back from you how we could do a little bit better at Newcastle. If there's advice, it could be very generic advice, but I'm always open to improving student experience and also how the university can work better with Australian industry.
I think the bit I would say is in this, and it's happening fast, and I am, personally trying to figure out also what the future will hold. But I think given the disruption and the opportunities coming from AI is going to be very profound. In business, we're seeing it. We are seeing some major opportunities, some major disruption. And I think my hypothesis is that AI will grow the pie for humanity eventually, but there'll be a very rocky road, and as has been in other industrial revolutions. So I think students coming out of the current system will be facing that environment. So starting to equip and enable students to be adept at AI and using AI to enhance performance is something that companies are already valuing. I would say embrace it. The universities should be supporting it. It's a profound change, but it's underway. It's not going to stop, and we need to just embrace it and take advantage of it. The other thing I'd say for our graduates, if they want to accelerate their careers as they join new organizations, I think AI is one, but I think universities offer a great foundation. But I find the graduates who develop teaming skills are stronger team players, have a higher sense of developed interpersonal skills, or EQ, you can call it, but it can be developed. It's not the natural EQ, IQ sort of barriers. I think those are, if they come armed with that capability, I've just seen they accelerate because they all come from a very similar level of aptitude. It's the attitude. If the attitude can be shaped to be growth mindset and to be, the yes thing, the example I gave, I think I've seen those graduates prosper more in the real world, if you use that term, because in the complex real world, you just start to if you're a growth mindset and you have that attitude to what you're doing, it shows very clearly. Especially from me, I can sense a graduate in the room, or I can spot them. And so can my leadership team. And if you're spotted, you're on a different path in your career. So sometimes I find some of the universities are not investing enough in those softer skills. And I think through teamwork, through the assignment works, just encouraging that, but really developing that skill.
I've really enjoyed our discussion today, and want to thank you very much for your time. You're truly a wonderful alumnus of the University of Newcastle and a very great graduate and a good leader for Australian business. So we're very proud to have you here today. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Tarun Gupta, Managing Director and CEO of Stockland, one of Australia's great property development companies.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
This was Leading Conversations with University of Newcastle Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky, in conversation with CEO of Stockland and proud graduate of the University of Newcastle, Tarun Gupta. This podcast was recorded on Awabakal land at the University of Newcastle's Callaghan campus. To hear more stories from inspiring leaders, be sure to tune into the next episode featuring Francis Kay, Director and CEO of the Hunter Medical Research Institute. Until then, this was Leading Conversations with University of Newcastle Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky.